Welcome to another PT Tuesdays, guys. We're here again with Dr. Reyes and myself, Coach Irene. Today we're talking about the importance of stretching. So take it away.
Thanks. Stretching is absolutely vital to a workout. I mean, we're talking from your everyday, I just want to go out walking or train 5 days a week to your high level professional athletes. First, you got to define what it is that you're doing, right? There's static stretching, PNF stretching, dynamic stretching, all sorts of things. Plain and simple, all stretching helps, but again, it's a concept of intent. So when and how you're doing it. If you're doing it before a workout, dynamic, always dynamic. I will tell you that none of my patients go into the clinic and just begin working out. They go on a bike or on a treadmill, or they do some type of dynamic warm up before we even get into the routines or exercises that I have ready for them. We don't, because typically you got to think a muscle needs to lengthen, right? That's the point of stretching. We spend so much time in forward posture at a desk job or in rigid positions at different jobs, or maybe you work out a lot and the muscle just over time starts to like constrict a little bit because we bulk up, or maybe you focus on certain like lift routines, right? But we have to remember that there's eccentrics, the lengthening of a muscle. And if we can't lengthen the muscle, that's typically actually where I see injuries occur in even everyday people who like are driving and they're in a forward posture. It's usually a quick movement of the head or low back pain when someone goes to pick up something, and it's the quick engagement of the muscles picking something up, and then they feel like a pop or they can't move, a muscle spasm. Muscle spasms, all these things that happen typically occur when muscles are shortened. So, and they happen with shortened muscles at a quick, like, I guess velocity is the way to say. So when you're driving and you turn to your blind side and all of a sudden you get that stiffness where you like lock up, or the example I talked about, picking up a box or a weight, and then all of a sudden, so yeah, absolutely important to always do a dynamic warm up, dynamic stretching before that's active movement while stretching the muscle before a workout for at least 5 minutes. That's what I have all my patients do. Their warm-ups are 5 minutes minimum. Sometimes I will bring it up to 10 depending on other underlying like medical conditions or my intent behind the regimen. Additionally, stretching afterwards is shown to have some really good benefits too. I mean, we're talking about reduced muscle soreness. There's a lot of research out there that's constantly controversial, going back and forth about like pre and post workout stretching, right? But what we do know is that stretching has vast health benefits for people of all ages, whether they're children all the way to 80 years old. I mean, there's research out there that shows that people who are actively stretching 3 days a week over the age of like 45 to 65 are having health benefits in reduced heart rate, arterial stiffness, hypertension. We're talking about cardiovascular improvements on just 3 days a week of stretching, of 30-second interval stretching. That's what the research out there shows. Minimum of a 30-second stretch is what we need in order to have a sufficient muscle lengthening happen. And then you'll see results in about 2 to 3 weeks, because that's usually where adaptation happens with the muscle and the nerves. And that's when research shows that people mostly will have actual improvements in flexibility when they test it. So from pre and post results. So yeah.
Okay, so that sounds good. So in other words, what we're doing over there at the gym is we're doing pretty good because we do dynamic stretches, of course, before, so our warm-ups, like our extensions and stuff like that. And then afterwards, we also take 3 minutes after the workout to stretch after the workout. And then we recommend that if someone needs, extra stretching or foam rolling or whatever, that we could also help them with that. Now, what about people? So what I tend to happen, I used to be, well, I still am a dancer. So for me, I'm very, very flexible. For stretching, it's very difficult for me to stretch and have a good stretch because of my flexibility. Now, what do you recommend for that? Is there like, I don't know, like equipment that I can use, like a, you know, a, I don't know, like a string or something, anything, anything to help a bungee. I don't know.
Yeah, I won't lie because I've had dancers as patients, but that is actually one of the most, for me, has been difficult because of the flexibility that they have. It's hard to get a dancer, especially in ballet, where their flexibility is amazing. And you're like, okay, how do I stretch this individual to what is good for them compared to when I stretch somebody else? All they need is like a slight movement, while the dancer is extremely flexible. So I will be honest and say that it is dependent on the individual, and there's no like set in stone equipment that we say like, okay, I'm gonna put a dancer between two chairs and have them overstretch or ballistic stretch. So I would always say is your safest bet is to stretch to your limitation without overdoing it. So if what that means is for you to utilize a wall or to utilize a chair or a table, because a lot of my patients, we use two things. We use chairs and tables, just because like 95% of my patients are not that flexible. There's a very small percentage of my patients who are just either high level athletes or they're like dancers, so use what's around you, being creative. Like, for example, for me in this room, if I were a dancer, the most I would use is the wall. I would probably set up a wall or find a way to overstretch in my limitation. Like, and I mean that as a safe bet, because what I don't want to do is do like a Karate Kid style split and think because I have good flexibility that I'm going to push the limits of that flexibility, because there's no like measurement where I say, okay, for these individuals, they have to have this flexibility and go beyond that range of motion, so kind of I will be honest and say it's kind of a hard thing. We have physical therapists out there specifically that specialize in specific like athlete areas such as dancers, and that's usually where I will like go to a dance PT and be like, hey, what do you utilize? Because there's not much around the clinic, and most people in their house don't have much equipment either. So you have to be kind of creative and use what you have and use it safely.
Great. Good to know. Not for me, but for everyone else. No, that's great. That's great because, to be honest, everyone has a wall. Everyone should have a table or a chair, so that's a good thing to know that you can actually use a wall or a table or a chair to be able to, use that as a tool to stretch further. Because for me, it was pretty difficult. Like a lot of the times I had, where my hip was always terrible, but that's because I was so flexible and and I was always active. And for a moment in my life, after I got out of the military or the service, I just stopped being as active or as flexible. I wouldn't stretch as much. So I have this last question for the segment to be over. Do you recommend stretching every day even if you don't exercise?
Absolutely. ACSM guidelines already show that 2 to 3 days a week, somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes of stretching is great for individuals. Is it hard to keep up with? I mean, absolutely. I'm not gonna lie, I've been a victim of that, and it is hard to just sit there and get in the stretch. That's why usually I implement it with a workout routine, so that's considered part of my daily requirement. The more you stretch, the better. Again, as long as you do it safely, you're not doing ballistic stretching and like pulsing through the stretches and pushing the limits. You're just stretching to get until you feel it, and then you hold and do like a pause, like if you're doing static stretching post workout and you do a 30-second hold, or if you're doing dynamic warm-ups, whichever it is, just kind of understand that like 3 days a week is That's just the minimum requirement. If we do more, great, but you also got to be realistic in understanding that everyone has a busy schedule, things going on, family. So take into consideration that 2 to 3 days a week is really all you need to show health benefits. So if you're someone that's concerned about, I can't keep up with it for 7 days, just do it twice a week and start it out there for 10 minutes and then work your way into adding intervals and saying, okay, now I'm going to go from 10 minutes to 12, 12 to 15, from 2 to 3 days, from 3 to 4 days, so on and so forth. Eventually you build the habit and you can start implementing it throughout 5 to 6 days a week without even thinking about it, because you have the 5-minute dynamic warm up and then you have the 5-minute cool down or 3-minute cool down. And before you know it, you met your requirement for the week. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. So there you have it, guys. That is the importance of stretching. And well, I guess you're going to have to know for our next segment what's going to happen, because I'm not letting you guys know. So stay tuned for our next segment, where we're going to be speaking again with on PT Tuesdays with Dr. Reyes. Thank you so much for giving us this information and how important stretching really is for us.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Bye.
Bye.